Hey everybody, Fishman here. Welcome to another video. This is Fish Room Vlog number 15, and have I ever been getting an awful lot of use of this little sink I put together. Now, if you remember from the build video, my intentions for it long term are not just for ease of general aquarium maintenance in my fish room, but I also want to be able to build different size screens for it, different attachments, so I can sort out, scuds and cherry shrimp and that sort of thing according to size. So if I'm going to put some in a new aquarium, like a client or whatever, they prefer the larger ones and that sort of thing. And if I'm going to feed fish, it's better to put in ones that are, mouth size instead of putting in something that's too large. But all those sorts of things are more long term. What I really want to do initially is actually just use it, try it out. See if it does what I want it to do before I get to all that other stuff. Because if it's not convenient, if it doesn't actually make what I want to do easier, there is literally no point to doing it, because that's its initial purpose. So what I've done here so far is I've just took a net and I stuck it in there because I don't want the duckweed to go down the drain, and just in case I actually do pick up a shrimp or two that I want not to go down the drain, I want to be able to save them. Now, I'm not in any aquariums here at this point at this particular time where that's much of a danger, because there aren't really any babies in that tank, and mostly it's just duckweed I'm skimming out. But also, while I'm doing that sort of skimming, it does lower the surface tension in the aquarium, and that's also really quite important. So my preliminary thoughts on this is I really, really like it. It's actually saves me a lot of time. This may sound really stupid. I mean, it is just a little drain, and I could just as easily be filling a bucket right now. But when it comes to maintenance, this is something I think I've said many times already. If you find it annoying, if you find it something that you just don't necessarily want to do, you're going to put it off. And I'm that way. I suspect a lot of you guys are that way too. But if it's interesting, or if it's easy, and if it doesn't take you any kind of effort or that sort of thing, the maintenance just goes by rather quickly, and as the case here, very quickly, and you get what you need done, and you get on to other things. And I find in those cases, you end up not minding doing the work, and that's actually the thing I like about this the most. The downside for the duckweed is I find it a lot easier to remove it now, and you can see the tank to the immediate, well, the only tank you can see in the frame. There's a lot less duckweed in there. I don't want to eliminate it. I do want it to be under control, though. I don't like the surface of the tank covered in it. It is a detriment to oxygen exchange and fish trying to find food and light getting down to the plants below. And in the case of this particular aquarium, it is a detriment to the free-floating algae I have in there. So I like a relatively clear surface. I don't mind, you can still see bits and pieces of the duckweed there, but it is minimal and manageable. And those are two very important words for me when it comes to this sort of thing. So this clip you've been watching is just a little under 4 minutes, and in that time I have pretty much removed most of the duckweed from an aquarium, and little bits and pieces of pearlweed that break off, and I've also pruned down the hornwort that was in that tank, though that's off camera. Usually what I do for hornwort as a separate treatment, I'll just put it in a little bit of a basin, and I usually do that because shrimp and scuds can cling to it a little bit better, and it's just easier to pour water in it later and shake them loose. And one thing I've noticed during this test run is I won't be using nets with this sink for much longer. I will definitely be making some kind of sieve, because as the water goes down through the hole, it brings duckweed with it, and that forms a little ball, and then the ball gets a little bit bigger than the hole, and you have to wiggle it to get it out. So to make it more easy, I will definitely be using some other form of mesh. So I'm going to show you one more clip of this. This is pretty much what I was doing in the tank above. I'm not going to show you a long clip. It's just going to be a little one here. One of the interesting things about this particular clip is it illustrates how difficult it is to get rid of duckweed when you have other plants in the aquarium. Now in this tank, off to the left there is some pearlweed, and my hand right now is pushing down some hornwort. And what happens is when you're moving other plants around in here, ones that are near the surface, I mean the Java fern at the bottom is not a problem at all, is you end up with small bits of duckweed trapped in there, and you don't really notice it. I mean, you can clean this out so there's nothing on the surface at all, and then the next day, all of a sudden you have a whole pile of duckweed there. It's not because it grew that fast, but it's just managed to loose itself from the hornwort or the pearlweed, or in the case when I used to keep frogbit, from that as well. And that's one of the reasons why I don't keep frogbit anymore, because it literally makes this impossible. At least with the pearlweed, I can put a rock on it or some small branch and keep it lower to the bottom. And of course I can just prune the hornwort out, and it again becomes less of an issue if I really want to clean the surface off. But again, it's just one of those things I wanted to show you. So I'm going to move on to a little bit of the live food aspects again here. Now, this tank here I originally set up for shrimp and scuds, and what I've been doing is periodically when I want to feed my fish is I just go in with a turkey baster and just go down into the mulm, and I suck up just a bunch of stuff that's there. And I've done that 3 times on this tank and squirted into, well, the same little plastic tub. And that is just, like I said, 3 turkey basterfuls, and that's how many scuds are just in that one tiny little section. It's actually teeming in there, which is really, really good. And this is just food for my fish. I will dump that in an aquarium. Usually, that if I'm not going to screen them out, that'll just go into an African cichlid tank, and then that's great food. Now, this is obviously Daphnia, but guess where this Daphnia came from? It's not the Daphnia culture. This is well, just a tub full of water I pulled out of my algae culture, which is to the right of the Daphnia culture. I honestly didn't think I had contaminated it with Daphnia, but somehow they got in there. This is the Daphnia culture, and you can see it's doing really, really well. And this is the algae culture, and it is also now doing really, really well for Daphnia. So that tank I showed you where I took the scuds out of is where I'm now harvesting algae for this tank here. The nice thing about having fish in this tank is if there's a Daphnia in there, they eat them. So I can maintain my algae culture, which is kind of nice. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do now. I'm going to try maintaining those 2 cultures of Daphnia where they are. I mean, the one on the left obviously is just doing really well anyway. The one on the right now, I've started instead feeding them heavily on well, basically they're vegetable pellets, spirulina and other things that are in them, and I'm trying to get the snails to poop a lot more, and I'm also going to put scuds in both these tanks to also get more going, and I'm going to try culturing it this way, periodically supplementing with the algae from that tank. And I've also started another algae culture in another aquarium well away from here, just to make sure it doesn't get inoculated with Daphnia. Now this is the vinegar eel culture I set up. This is the one with the pure white vinegar. I set up 2 of these to test out how white vinegar would do, because it shows up better in contrast for just seeing how many are in there. It's doing okay, but this is an established vinegar eel culture I have going, and you can see it. This is just teeming with vinegar eels. It is the kind of level I really want, and of course what I really need if I'm going to raise a lot of small fish. Now when I harvest them, this is the bulb I put them in, that's the long tube. This is actually not the preliminary harvest. This is harvest number 2. I'll fill the bulb up and put water in it. A couple hours later I'll come back and it'll look like this, so I'll take that out, feed it to my tanks, and then I'll fill up with tank water, and then I'll come back, again a couple hours later, or 4 or 5 hours later, or whatever, and then I'll harvest again just like this. I'll just take a turkey baster, I'll remove all the liquid, and then I'll go and feed that to the fish, and then of course I'll top it up. Now with the culture, with the apple cider vinegar cultures, the second one I showed you, I can do that for probably about 2 to 3 days before I will deplete all the vinegar eels that are in that one small container. This one's actually sitting just inside a little, if you bought cottage cheese, the smaller ones, it's sitting inside that. So that shows you roughly the volume. And you can see I just filled this up and it's still, again, tons of worms in there. And hopefully the white vinegar will get to that. And if it doesn't, I will just simply not bother using them for culturing, because one of the downsides of vinegar eels is the cultures reproduce really slowly. It does take time for it to get to the level of that, the population density that's in that apple cider vinegar culture. And also, they're really, really small. You can see in here, the baby guppies are just having a heyday. They're running around, eating tons of them. But you'll notice that the larger guppies, like the bigger females and males, aren't paying as much attention to it because they're just too small for them. They will go after it a little bit, but it's not the same as with microworms, which are bigger, and then all the adults will go too. Now this is the plant I am going to be using for my next test in high humidity planter filters, because it's doing really nicely in here, and it is growing above the water, and it's still looking nice and lively, so that's going to be interesting for that. Now this last clip comes about because of a comment I got. They suggested that the reason the water wheel isn't turning as well as the drum is because of the position. It's just not getting the right amount of flow down there. So I switched them and put the water wheel on top, and it is running fine, and I put the drum on the bottom. And we're going to see long term, well, not really long term, because I don't want to keep this going for too much longer, but I want to see if the drum stops at all. So we'll see if that happens. Let's see if it's position related. So anyway, thank you very much for watching. If you like this style of video, please like and or subscribe, and definitely leave comments, because I try to pay attention to them all. And if you have suggestions, definitely leave them there too. And I will try and get to as many of them as I can. So thanks again for watching. I'll see you in the next video, and bye for now.